Hey everybody, it's Gary Lucas. It's 3 o'clock here, and this is my tribute to the Rolling Stones, my favorite rock band, and I would say the world's greatest rock and roll band, without a question. And I'm honored here that Caroline is being my camera person today. So if you see camera work that's a little slicker and fancier and better, I sound like Ugly George here. Okay, let's just get going here. Yes, a little bit of Play with Fire. One of my favorite Stones songs, preceded by a little bit of Satisfaction. And we started with the Stones, my version of the Stones' great cover of She Said Yeah, which was partially written by Sonny Bono. And anyway, I'm here to just tell you the occasion of this is two things. One is tomorrow is Sir Michael Philip Jagger's 76th birthday, and that's an accomplishment in itself. They've been rolling, and he's been rolling along for all those years, and so many great albums. I would say that the Stones, if you look at the classic rock bands, of which in my pantheon I would name the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, and the Beach Boys. There's a pretty good list of five for you. If you examine the Stones' output, they consistently produced an incredible stream of great albums over many, many years, and just kept turning them out despite lineup changes and deaths and whatnot. And speaking of death, the other thing that was called to my attention this week is a new DVD about the death of Brian Jones, about the life and death of Brian Jones, who certainly was one of my favorite Rolling Stones, and I was pretty sad to hear the news of his death back in the day. And this was sent to me. I looked at the link, and I've written an account of it, which will be up on the Please Kill Me website in about a week. A pretty extensive review, and I would give it wholeheartedly thumbs up. It's quite a good film and quite worthy of your attention if you're at all interested in the Rolling Stones or Brian or that period in world culture, because it's got excellent interviews with people like my Facebook friend Sam Cutler, also Phil May, who just died from The Pretty Things, who I knew, and Dick Taylor, who I also knew, actually opened in France for The Pretty Things about 10 years ago. But overall, it's just a really excellent doc, so worthy of your attention. And while I got your attention, I'm going to give a shout out here to a couple of people. Number one is my friend Robert Munn, who's responsible for this beautiful 3D version, 2 foot by 2 foot, of the great Rolling Stones psychedelic album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. And this was a gift from Bob. He's an expert in 3D ephemera, as he puts it, and he does quite a few beautiful renditions in a giant size in 3D of some classic album covers. So check his work out. I mean, he's working on Disraeli Gears for me right now, which has a beautiful cover by Martin Sharp, who was an artist, an expat Aussie, who worked for Oz magazine, and he's also working on the King Crimson, first Court of the Crimson King album cover. It's great. You can check him out at www.depthography.com. That is DEPTHOGRAPHY. Depthography, which reminds me of Deptford, which is where Mick apparently met Keith all those years ago on the train. They'd been schoolmates in the dim past, but there they reunited on this train because Mick spotted Keith, or vice versa. I'm not sure, holding a blues album under his arm. And they were both avid blues fans, and they thought they were the only ones in England, but lo and behold, there was a whole subculture there. But anyway, the best books that I've read, and I've read many books on the Stones, I want to recommend, are the books by my old friend and collaborator, Andrew Lou Goldham, who was the Stones' original manager along with Eric Easton for a while, and then he took over full-time, and also their producer in what I consider their golden age of all of the early hit records. And actually, Andrew commissioned me to work on an album of Rolling Stones classics done kind of with a Latin twist in Bogota, Colombia, where he's based, or he was based. And that was quite fun, a great experience, and Caroline was there with me. I went in the studio with a guy named Juan Galeano, who's a really brilliant Colombian musician, and some excellent players, Colombian guys. And we knocked out an album that finally came out, I think, under the title The Rolling Stones Songbook, Part 3. I have to double check under the name The Andrew Loog Oldham Orchestra. But it went through to some different projected titles, including The Bother Boys. Anyway, check that out. I posted Play with Fire and maybe Satisfaction as well on my SoundCloud page, so you can hear that. And I was doing a little bit of a version of these arrangements. But a lot of other great musicians are on that record, including Johnny Marr, the Smiths guitarist originally, who's excellent, and Christine Ohlman singing on it, and it was a lot of fun to work on. I hope Andrew as well. But he really kind of got the ball going for the Stones, and should get a lot more credit in that regard. But I recommend you his books very highly, 3 of them. One is called Stoned, the first one, which is like early days for Andrew and the Stones, and how they, but also you get a whole backstory of the English musical culture at the time, with interviews and first-person accounts. It's an eye-opener, especially about how the way things worked in the music business in the early 60s there. The second one is called Two Stoned, numeral 2 Stoned, and that's the Stones in their heyday and up to the point where Andrew and the Stones have a parting of their ways during the making of Satanic Majesties, actually, and then Andrew's life after that. And then there's a third volume called Stone Free, which is basically Andrew's tribute to some of the great musical manipulative Svengalis over the years. Managers and agents who pulled a lot of strings for artists, and you know, the pros and cons of them, and it's a very, very, very good read. So I recommend you seek it out. Probably Amazon is the best place to get all 3. And enough said. So I want to now also, we'll switch gears here in glasses, pay tribute to the folks who visited me at PayPal and shared the love, because I do these for nothing, but it would be nice if you visit my virtual tip jar. Sebastian Doggart, really, he's an old friend, a journalist for places like the Evening Standard originally. He's the guy who got me to play in Cuba originally. He's a great guy and a great documentary filmmaker. Particularly of note are his 2 documentaries about his Bête Noire obsession, Condoleezza Rice. Check them out, Courting Condi, and then the second one is called American Con Artist, something like that. But it's certainly fascinating. Phil Polly, a multiple contributor, thank you. Kenneth Rhodes, also, you know, I really, really appreciate it. Mark Green, who's taking guitar lessons. He's a very excellent guitarist in his own right. Thank you, Mark. And Anna Brzezinska from Poland, who's a new fan of these live streaming shows. Thank you, Anna. Much appreciated. All right, so I was talking about the last time, and my encounter with the Stones, what really hit me to them and sealed the deal, as it were, was hearing, coming over the ether, this riff on the guitar that played by Brian Jones, as it turns out, that is the main riff of that song, The Last Time. And that was like their first kind of semi-hit in America. It charted. It wasn't really until a few months later when Satisfaction came out, which dominated everything worldwide, that the Stones, as the force they really emerged into took shape. But The Last Time was a harbinger, and the riff is so good. And the fact is, like, everybody and their brother would play it wrong. myself included, because the tendency was to play it down here. I'm going to have another tuning, so I'll do this on electric to demonstrate, okay? The song itself is kind of a rewrite of Maybe the Last Time by the Staple Singers, but the riff is original to Brian. It's Brian's song. So people would go, so that's it in first position all the way down the neck, which that's how you play it, and it sounds accurate, but there's something off about it. And I have to go back, because my version is another thing altogether. But going back to this guitar, what emerged with the advent of YouTube were clips of the Stones, like on that Sullivan Show and English TV, various live tapings, Hither and Yon. And there it was revealed that Brian was actually doing this. Which is a whole different thing, especially with these hammer-ons in there. It gives it a really twangy, country-ish vibe. Sounds a lot better, actually, than to me. And that gave me a new appreciation for his skills as a musician. It's well known he could pretty much wring music out of any instrument that he found lying around the studio. And he's all over the mid-period Stones albums on dulcimer, sitar, mellotron, vibes, clarinet was one of his original instruments, saxophone he played on a Beatles B-side right at the end. He could get music out of anything, keyboards of course, and guitars. And that whole ancient art of weaving that Keith Richards talks about, how he loves to get these two guitars meshed together. He's done that with Mick Taylor and Ronnie Wood, of course, most recently. But his work with Brian, which was kind of formulated when they lived in this squalid flat in Edith Grove, if you know your history of the Stones, that is just gold. That's genius. And Brian was a large part of it. A very accomplished guitarist. Also a mean player of recorder. Ruby Tuesday is another song that apparently Brian had a lot to do with it, but Brian unfortunately was cut out of songwriting royalties. And credit may not be everything, but it's important. So just saying here. So I'm going to do my version of The Last Time, which is in open E major tuning. It's basically tuned to an open E chord. Okay, this is a little trade secret. G string comes up a half a step to G sharp, A flat. The fourth string, D, goes up to E. The fifth string, A, goes up to B. Anyway. Right. I'm forgetting my own arrangement. Well, anyway, next time I'll do a tribute to Peter Green and I'll throw in The Last Time for you. But while we still have a few minutes, here's another one that I worked out for those sessions. She's a Rainbow, right? Smash, Use the Rainbow, from the great Satanic Majesty's Request album. I know Tim Lucas, my friend, has finally succumbed to the charms of this controversial, but I would say brilliant masterpiece. And, well, what can I say? Stones have always intrigued me. I saw them in 1965. On October 30th, I recall this concert very clearly. It burned its way into my brain. In my hometown of Syracuse, New York, there was one venue that all the groups that would visit would play, and that was the Syracuse War Memorial, where they also had hockey and basketball games when they weren't doing concerts. And up to that point, I had only seen show there with Peter, Paul, and Mary and the Righteous Brothers, Sergio Mendes and Brazil 66. So this was really my first proper rock concert. And I copped a ticket to a friend of my sister's who had a spare. And it really changed my life. I mean, it was a package tour. So on the bill was, well, it opened with this guy, Ed Wool and the Nomads, who did 2 songs. They were a local band, Forgettable. And then Monty Rock the Third, who later morphed into Discotheques and the Sexalettes when he had a hit with Get Dancin'. He did a number with Ed Wool, and all I remember about it was he sported green-dyed hair. It was pretty outrageous, and it didn't go over that well, but it was intriguing. He was followed by the Vibrations, a really great black R&B group who'd been on Shindig a lot, and Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells, featuring Patti LaBelle, great singer, I believe Sarah Dash then, and then my friend Nona Hendrix, who did a terrific job on this World of Captain Beefheart album I did with her last year, which you guys should check out. And then last but not least, a band from Boston doing kind of a Paul Revere and the Raiders gloss, and they were called the Rockin' Ramrods, and they weren't bad. They played a song called Don't Mess with Fu Manchu. No, sorry, Don't Fool with Fu Manchu. And they had a single out. They claimed on the stage that it was the theme from the new Hammer 7 Arts horror film with Christopher Lee, I think The Mask of Fu Manchu, but it wasn't. The B-side was called Tears Melt the Stones, that I also recall. And then it was Showtime with the Stones. And they only did 20 minutes, but it was the most intense 20 minutes of my young life at that time. And I'll never forget, because Mick dominated the stage as usual, and Keith did his duck walk behind Mick and traveled across the stage a couple of times. Brian basically stood there just beaming and just looked godlike. Bill and Charlie were fantastic. There were kids everywhere holding up signs with their favorite Stone written on it, or We Love the Rolling Stones. They opened with Everyone Needs Somebody to Love, and finished with Satisfaction, in which one screaming girl managed to tear herself away from cops onto the stage, and she was quickly ejected off the stage. And then it was it, and the lights went up. There was no encore. That was the second show they did that day. They were working really hard in those days, and they had an afternoon show in Cornell College at Ithaca, which was the last place actually I played before lockdown, going back in early March. But anyway, so that just scarred me for life. I've written about that too. I think I posted an account last night. And what can I say? I was set on the path. I never did see them again, but I've seen plenty of those specials on HBO and whatnot. And they're still rocking, they're still going strong. So I just wanted to say happy birthday, Sir Mick. And everyone, you know, I guess that's it. Oh, there's Caroline's phone. She has a very important phone call coming in. So I'm going to take over here. Whoops, we got it backwards. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll be back with you. You know, I'm really broken up about the death of Peter Green. But I was, you know, I had to do this tribute. But on Tuesday we'll do a full-length tribute to Peter. Maybe that'll be two episodes here. Because he was fantastic and a hero of mine. And I'm really sorry to hear that he's passed. And until that time, please stay safe. I love playing for you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Now, yeah, I'm going to work on on the last time my arrangement. I don't know. I've only gotten about 4 hours sleep these days, folks. I'm writing up a storm of memoirs, among other things. Okay, see you on Tuesday. Be safe. Have a great weekend. Love you.